Nostalgia. Is it the warm glow of your monitor singing you false promises that things can be as they once were? Or is it the waving red flag of your past trying to scream that something went wrong all those years ago? Why is it that some find comfort in old UIs, ancient sound fonts, and crumbling cultures? And furthermore, have you noticed the overwhelming amount of media that capitalizes on this? Well, none have done it in quite this manner. On February 12th, 2024, a YouTube channel by the name of GEB Operating System would appear. Their first upload would come the day after on the 13th, and is titled the same as the channel. In fact, all the videos are, save for a number to denote each part. I find that since there's such little discussion about this online, it's best to just jump in. That being said, there are some people that have made videos on this before. When you finished with mine, I urge you to go watch theirs. From the outset of the video, we hear the whirring of fans. We're greeted with a login screen, and the user we know nothing about accesses their profile and starts playing music. If it sounds familiar, it's from all the Fruitager Arrow edits that were popular a ways back. The character writes an entry on Strange Dreams that reads as follows. I already know this will be branded as stupid, but I really need to talk to someone about this. It's been a while since my parents and I have all had the same dream. It's not even something that strange, it's usually just a series of places that I don't think I've ever seen. The thing that creeps me out the most is that my parents did. It's like, I don't know, their memories? If anyone knows how this is called in a scientific biological way, please tell me. Thanks. Grammar aside, what's detailed here is very attention-grabbing. Before we have enough time to collect ourselves, there's a message from a character named Lulu in a chat client. Our character replies and we learn that their name is Nora. Lulu sends a link to a game where they can paint together, and for the most part this seems okay. They're prompted to draw their pets, and they do. They're then prompted to draw a relaxing place. As they do so, we get a freeze frame from 8:30 on either June 8th, 1991 or August 6th, 1991 that asks, "Is this a relaxing place for you?" The two girls continue until Nora's computer blue screens. Earlier I said both potential dates because you can see after the computer has crashed, the physical memory dump begins on February the 15th, 1945, and runs until an unspecified date in 1979. The month-date format is completely different here. On top of this, that's a 34-year gap, and I may have something on this later. For now, we continue and the screen remains black. For a split second, we get this image, which looks as though it contains some sort of data, which I'll be taking an extra look at later on. Restarting the computer, Lulu has logged off. In her absence, Nora checks the comments on her post, and then finds a mysterious folder on her desktop. She opens it. Video 1 leaves us hanging on a black screen. The second video opens with Nora doing math homework. Lulu messages Nora about the strange file, but it was gone by the time the two got to talking about it. Lulu then mentions a website she was working on about labyrinths. Nora skims it, says she'll read more later, and the two get into it about the font that Lulu uses. Afterward, Nora asks to call later and hunts for an online game to play. She settles on City Folks 2D. She creates her character and enters the game world. In the game, she takes a bus to what we assume is her house, and in it there are 3 members. The first one is Eva, who asks if she ever wishes she had someone else to play with, and that in a few months they'd get used to playing with someone new, although it runs off screen. The second person doesn't have a name, seems bandaged up, and says the noise will come soon. There is only 1 floor left. Who do you think is to blame? Before, please don't hit me. In the kitchen, Polly asks about our sleep apnea and the unfairness of the world. On the table are some old photographs, and scrawled on one reads, I don't want to give birth. We notice footprints outside, so there we head. What is one last thought as you pull the trigger? There goes my head. Please, Jesus, watch over me. You should wait. You should wait. You should wait. Back inside the house, the family is gone. The TV still plays. The character moves into the kitchen, then into the dining room. There's a book called The Strange Situation. Then, the character walks through a dark corridor and the game, along with the video, abruptly ends. The third video begins with a conversation at a table between four figures, Martha, Nick, George, and Honey. George and Martha, the parents, argue over the gender of the child, in this case, our character. When comparing this to the images we saw earlier, it's easy to assume that our character struggles with their gender identity. Nick gets upset over Martha and Honey acknowledging your existence. George tells him to stop, and Nick says hello to the son or daughter who isn't there. Not only do the characters not agree on the way Nora is perceived, but some don't agree on perceiving them at all. George asks if anyone remembers how the play ends, Honey says she's scared, and Nick calms her down by explaining that you can't hurt someone that doesn't exist. Nora clicks on the fifth person. An empty text box appears. Honey says that we should go, and Nora does. We emerge in the same house from the last video. Static plays on the TV, but when observed, there's still something. The being follows. This prompts Nora to leave. City Folks 2D turns into a 3D walking simulator at this point. Down the street, there's a weird man that stands guard for admittance. Nora has nothing to give him. The giant head next to him doesn't want to talk to Nora either. When trying to move by them, the screen distorts and the weird man asks what we were expecting. Traveling down the other way, we hear a mourning dove, and then we get a call from Lulu. Nora answers.
Hey girl, I know you wanted to call me, but I thought, hey, why don't you go to your house instead? So, that's right, I'm coming over. And please, don't say anything, I'm already on my bike. I mean, duh. It wasn't obvious. See you.
Lulu is on her way. Nora puts on her music and opens Internet Explorer to do online quizzes. She searches for a best friend quiz and after answering the questions gets a 100% best friend score. After that, we time jump and Nora is watching a YouTube video about jellyfish and their culture.
The presence of so many interdependent individuals in a single organism that shares similar properties, such as homeostasis and reproduction, is called a superorganism or superindividual.
Once finished, Nora goes back to writing equations, but this becomes muddy and hard to read. There's a black screen and then... all of these computers running GEB Operating System. All of these computers running an individual program. The presence of so many interdependent individuals in a single organism that shares similar properties, such as files and coding languages, could be seen as a superorganism. The video ends. The fourth video starts with Nora playing a new Animal Crossing-like game on what seems to be an emulated handheld device made by the same company as the operating system. We don't know what the game is, but we do know that they're playing on LAN. I'm not entirely sure how this is possible if Lulu is at her own house, so maybe the two are together here. Nora goes to the stereo, picks a song, and plays a minigame set to it. Despite the hiccup in the middle, they don't seem to miss a beat. Afterward, the two go for a walk. Lulu goes into the store and Nora is beckoned over by a strange salesman just outside of it. After some lighthearted dialogue, Bob gives Nora a potion to see the future with. They ingest it and then we're moving past a few figures from the last video. There's a blue screen error beneath their feet and a note at the end that reads, "In a field of grass, near the sky, if you'll rise your eyes, you'll meet the great mother in the sky." Lulu wakes us up and we end up on a hill overlooking the town. The two begin to talk and Nora asks where Lulu's father was. He died before Lulu was born. She says it's okay that she brought it up, but sometimes she wonders what his last thought was before he pulled the trigger. Lulu then asks Nora what their biggest fear is. Nora says it's the realization that we don't know how our universe works. They get the impression that something horrible could happen and they wouldn't know why. That's what Goodell said. If you're in a closed system, what's out there will forever be a mystery. Nora asks Lulu what she's afraid of and her response is spiders. Lulu's mom is calling. She decides to go home, and the two say that it was nice to hang out. The screen fades to black. When it comes back, we're standing in the living room from earlier.
Too many information is overwhelming. Make it stop. I miss you every day. Texting to you feel helpless, and I don't know for how much longer I will be able to recognize the people around me. I feel so scared. Please go back. I promise I will take you back. You will always be my true best friend.
It sounds like someone's scared and unable to cope with the loss of someone else, but the words are hard to make out. The camera remains on a portrait for the remainder of the call, though. The fifth video begins with Nora looking through a photo album. They send Lulu a message with one of them and ask who the third figure is. Lulu tells us not to think too much about it. She seems to be avoiding the question as to who it is as Nora continues to pursue. Then Nora asks Lulu why, when they opened up about their fears, she wouldn't tell them what's on the website. Lulu resends the link, and it turns out that the website was actually a click-through Labyrinth game, not a website on Labyrinths. After clicking through, we get this grid, and then the game ends a little later. Lulu suggests Nora take time for themselves, then asks about their dreams. Nora explains that they struggle to tell them apart from reality. Lulu says she's there for them and then leaves to go eat. Later on, Nora goes to a conspiracy website and searches for BSB. She reads the following comments. The BSB is simply a shape compared to the classic BB. It was created based on human physiology. Thanks to the SB experiment, today we know much more about the concept of identity and how our brain works. If we assume that the BB is real, the BSB is nothing more than a model about the relationship between us and it. Maybe we're on the inside, or we're in a codependent relationship. He can see how we speak, how we behave, even change our reality. And it will always be the party that verbalizes, us, that justifies the other's actions, BSB. Regarding Relief 58's statements, I would like to agree and add the two main hypotheses regarding the BSB. 1. Codependency. The BSB is the left and we are the right. 2. There's a power dynamic involved. More than being two hemispheres, we are inside it, like cells or thoughts, trapped in two different scales of size we'll never know. This is so sick. I think this is a good visualization. I think this is more useful as an anti-crack advertisement. They don't make sense. Did you make those arrows randomly? Actually, the arrows here work because they represent the trend of hemispheres, not as two completely opposing things, but with nuances. Just then, Nora is notified that their connection is not secure, and they exit quickly, only to get a notification on CityFolks 2D. When they open it, they're in a strange cobblestone area. When they look inside of the first room window, we see a cell with a body on the floor. We don't miss the feeling of skin. At the center of the room, we're told that we can't be seen. We walk to the bottom left, and there's a mirror. After this, Nora enters the door to the right, an empty, vacuous platform with 3 pillars. Approaching the one in the middle, the following event occurs.
Hey, how we doing? Today, I'll ask you a question. Have you ever heard of the Rashomon effect? Let's imagine an event, a traumatic event. Did you know that when we store certain type of data, our personal biases change our memories? For example, if we were a little crazy, like a psychological profile, our memory will tend to glorify our actions. So when we remember them, rather than remembering the fact in its entirety, only these will come to mind. The Rashomon effect brings to the surface a stark question. What is the truth? When we don't have certain data, for example, events that are not objectively verifiable, how should we interpret them? Embracing ambiguity is the only possible answer. The ambiguity of the uncertainty of memory. This obfuscates, clouds, and hides. Not only are we suggestible, not only do we have to fight against ourselves, but also our perceptions are limited. if we cannot trust ourselves, only remains, at least to quantify ourselves. For example, but as everyone knows, red, blue, green are nothing more than mechanical waves. We are confined to our mind and our body, and the only thing that governs this data is what we would commonly call personality. Remember, you truly exist only if you acknowledge yourself!
I'm sure you noticed the backward sound. We'll get there later. After this, Nora approaches the pillar to the left. An eyeball materializes, asks us if we want to see, and Nora selects yes. The player then invites us forward to a table. We begin to play some kind of letter game, and we lose. The player reminds us that the B in GEB is there for a reason, and then sends us back to the prison. On the final pillar is an ear, and we agree to hear the following. We collect rotten skin, which the game prompts us to wear now or later. Nora selects later a few times, but the game won't have it. After this, Nora approaches the mirror again. The tension builds. The game tab closes abruptly following this conversation. The video ends on this still. Those are lips, and we know there's backwards audio. We'll get there, but first, we have one last video. In the sixth video, Nora is still in the prison in the city folks world. There are posters on the wall for abolishing dogs. Approaching the computer, another strange black and white video plays. In the box next to the computer lies something. It writhes and begs for his brother Gua back, a shy rabbit who's all alone. He misses him so much and even knows the character by name. With that, there's a new objective: help Donald find his brother. Nora goes through the door. They're outside. Approaching a sign, this creature shows up named Alba. They ask about the rabbit and he says it's bad business and that monkeys have been missing too. Alba offers to call the manager. Nothing comes of it. Alba says he's busy and needs to go help him. Nora is left alone, so they walk to the house on the far right and let themselves in. Nora heads to the right, then down a hall. Gua is on the table, decapitated. Nora turns to leave, heart palpitating. It's nighttime outside. They go to the far left, where they should end up back at the prison, but everything is muddy. They go down some stairs and end up navigating a textureless, warped place disappearing and reappearing until they're going back through a house toward a computer. They begin to play a game called Reassemble the Character. The first task is to put their dog back together, and Nora's successful. The second is to do the same with their father. After some time, Nora is successful. The third task is to do the same with their best friend.
I can't remember your face. Why is this happening to me? I don't want to forget.
And with that, GEB Operating System ends. Starting with the most pressing matter, when reversing the lips in episode 5, we get these letters. I've changed my mind 1,000 times over what the letters are, but I have since settled on BNSRUHLZVEA. As for the other section, the only thing I got was, and the normal truth will be reversed. When addressing the cipher with the letters given, I figured out that each of the even numerals corresponded to +4 and each of the odds were +1. That's why C turned to G and why 3 was D. Following this pattern, we can fill in the remaining squares and even check our work both ways. In my heart of hearts, I believe that I did solve this aspect of the puzzle. When putting together the link, I tried a few for each of what I thought I heard. I believe the down arrow to signal all lowercase from here. However, when continuing onward, I found that there seemed to be absolutely no solution to this puzzle, and as of making this video, I still cannot figure it out. It isn't how I wanted this to go, especially considering that this is the first video I've put out in a while, but I think that the solution is this. There is no solution. Now, this could be wrong. It seems like a long way to go, doesn't it? But burying the key in reverse text and then muddying it up with the piano audio, to me, seems like an intentional statement about the process of puzzle solving itself. So what if, in this instance, the lips are providing a demonstration of the very thing that they're talking about? While you've sat here pulling your hair out, you're no closer to the truth, to this master document that's supposed to solve everything. This master document that gives us all of the answers, or so we would assume. Admittedly, this feels like a cop-out so that I don't have to do the work. Trust me when I tell you I came at this from every conceivable angle. At this point, only the creator of the series can illuminate what's going on here, and I think they may have already. Let's go back to episode 2 when we're given the wrong link. Nora skims this link. I want to point out the following information. Labyrinths are among the most mysterious of mental structures. It is not known how they could have developed in so many different cultures and cities. From Knossos to Maris to Leno, labyrinths have appeared in all of these places, perchance precisely because they belong to the collective imagination in an innate way. Then the page goes on to describe the 3 types of labyrinths. We'll get back to that. On the next page, the site says the division into 3 categories is very similar to that of another concept complementary to labyrinths: paradoxes. Both are, in fact, the human mind putting to the test its own limits through the construction of structures so complex that not even itself can explain them. The most destabilizing detail about paradoxes is the fact that when we encounter them, we intuitively feel as if they make sense, even though evidence leads us to believe otherwise. I believe these 2 passages illuminate what GEB Operating System as a whole is saying. First, I think the link doesn't exist, or if it does, we don't have enough information to complete the puzzle. In other words, I believe it to be a paradox, a red herring. And the brilliant thing is, the more time you sink into this puzzle, the more you seek to justify the time spent. If only you could just solve this link, look at this key in this way. No, it must not be all for nothing, but instead, it's you that messed up. The smoking gun for this is on the webpage as well. The type of labyrinth we see in episode 6 that gives us the key for the link is a cyclomatic labyrinth. It's also the only labyrinth description on the page that's in bold. Cyclomatic, the labyrinth par excellence, it is a network structure. Unlike the aberrescent, this one is characterized by open, transverse passages through which one could roam endlessly. The overwhelming sense of dread that these labyrinths can instill is caused by the instability of all possibilities. I find it too good to be true that this, along with the excerpt about paradoxes, are there for no reason. I believe that this serves as foreshadowing before the rest of the narrative begins to break down around episode 5. But given everything else, what exactly is going on here? Who or what is Nora? Who is Lulu? Who is Rebecca? And why can't we distinguish dreams from reality? Because of the one other thing that the Labyrinth webpage gives us: the collective imagination. There's a popular paradox that would explain the idea of a collective imagination: Boltzmann's brain, or as GEB Operating System calls it, the BB. Boltzmann's argument is that if the universe came into and out of existence with random chance, that at some point, that random chance should end up creating a brain because it's random chance. And who's to say we aren't inside of that brain? That the whole universe itself is, by random chance, a brain. The paradox comes once you start to ask questions like, whose brain is it? But the fact that it's a paradox in of itself, that GEB specifically points out paradoxes as they relate to labyrinths, and that later on the player character tells us that the B in GEB Operating System stands for something when we fail a puzzle, and I believe that the B stands for brain, I think it's safe to make the assumption. So if BB is Boltzmann brain, we know that the BSB must be a play on the Boltzmann's brain. When we re-examine the relationship of hemispheres as the forum post suggests and listen to what the lips say,
Remember, you truly exist only if you acknowledge yourself.
A clear picture starts to emerge as to the story being told. I think the GEB in GEB Operating System stands for Gödel's emulated brain, or something to that effect. I don't think it's a coincidence that Nora's profile picture happens to be a dog. With all the attention towards psychology in this series, it's easy to assume that this is a nod to Pavlov's dog, a nod to psychological conditioning, or, in other words, training. The same sort of thing you might do with a neural network. So what if the story is as follows? What if Lulu and Nora are the same person? What if Nora is a simulated version of Lulu that lives with hazy memories of finding their father dead in the forest? What if the reason Nora doesn't have much of an identity at all is because she is emulated, like the game in which the two had a conversation on the hilltop? Wouldn't that explain being able to run the game on a local area network? Wouldn't that explain why Lulu wouldn't speak about the third figure in the photo? Maybe it's too much of a stretch, but there is one thing I think ties all of this together. On the YouTube channel for the series, beneath the community posts, we have audio credits for the series. Among the document link, there's a YouTube playlist which contains all of the songs used in the series called Lenore's Favorite Songs. These songs are interesting because they're songs that Nora played on her desktop, and yet the playlist is by Lulu. Back at the forum in episode 5, we see this idea of a relationship between the BSB and the BB, specifically the idea that they are two separate hemispheres, left and right. If this is true, and we re-examine episode 1, we see that the minigame they play right before the crash happens to be played on the left and the right respectively, the right side being the BB and the left side being the BSB. In other words, the right side justifies the left's actions and the left's existence. This is interesting to me because if that's the case, we understand why the game crashes in episode 1. The two were at odds with each other with both prompts: a dog and a cat, a beach at night, and the sunny plains. In other words, it's the visual representation of a paradox, or a mind at odds with itself. This is why the memories in City Folks 2D appear hazy to us. That is why in City Folks we see the dead body. That is why Lulu brings this up later on. And isn't it funny that Nora's biggest fear is the idea that the universe is a closed system and she doesn't know what's on the outside? That at some moment something terrible could happen, that it could all end in the blink of an eye, like the flicking of a power switch. But there's one last thing that finalizes this for me. At the beginning of episode 5, we get these photos, grainy yet vibrant with color. Not only do I think these two girls look the same, but the next picture is wholly unnecessary. That's red, blue, and purple. Nora, Lulu, and someone else. I find it far too convenient that red and blue were chosen for these two characters, and that both, when mixed together, become purple. These photos are stored by memory in the operating system. This in particular is a message, and it's also the reason Lulu is so strange about the messages. I also think as Nora explores these remnants of memory, she loses herself, which is why things in episode 6 become hazy and why she fades in and out of existence. Remember, you only truly exist if you can acknowledge yourself. Is it a coincidence that the entire time Nora spends playing these games and going over memories, she begins to lose parts of herself? That she has to think hard when asked what her pet looked like or what her father looked like? That she forgot what her best friend's face looked like? When she's not speaking with Lulu, she loses parts of herself. She loses parts of her identity and things become confusing rapidly. Suddenly, she's having trouble distinguishing her dreams from reality because she's an emulated brain. And so the series leaves us with a stark question to ask ourselves. If we don't know what our identity is, how can we justify our memories? How can you experience the Rashomon effect if you don't know who you are? Because the BSB, in this case Nora, works to justify the memories of the BB, in this case Lulu, and she can't. That is why she sobs. Nora knows that Lulu has a best friend outside of the virtual system, but she can't remember what she looks like. That friend may be Rebecca, and Rebecca may be the girl at the end of episode 6. Recall the following dialogue. This isn't about knowledge at all, am I right? This was always about you. And then the character goes on to say, what is it? Does your private God no longer speak to you? And in this sense, I believe that this private God is the simulated Nora. I believe that this final conversation justifies the entire series. This series was always about her. It was always about the two of them being one person. It was never about Rebecca. It was never about solving puzzles. It was about the unhealthy relationship a girl experiences with a simulated version of herself. It's about Lenora, who is both Lulu and Nora, a simulated best friend modeled off of your own personality, except unfortunately, the things that make us who we are aren't always pretty. This squeaky clean Fruitager Arrow aesthetic that the GEB operating system blankets itself in is, in fact, ironic. What makes up the best parts of you happen to also be the worst things that happen to you. At the end of it all, I can't definitively tell you what the answers are. I didn't create the series, but I think whoever is behind this narrative is incredibly intelligent. Even if I'm wrong here objectively, my interpretation isn't. What I got from the series was uniquely and personally tailored to me. The beautiful thing about a story crafted with such ambiguity is its ability to live beyond, to infect your mind with its characters, its scenarios, and its themes. In this right, I believe GEB Operating System to be a rich and overlooked gem, worthy of sitting alongside the best of the best in its genre. Please do yourself a favor and experience it firsthand, maybe even give the puzzle a crack. Subscribe to the channel. Whoever is behind this deserves all of the credit they can get. As for me, I'll be listening to Lenore's favorites while I search for something else to make a video on. Enjoy yourselves. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.